if you've got an opportunity or a pathway, or you've got something inside you that you really want to go after, be brave and bold.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner Sharon Sutton.
This week, my Island influencer is self-confessed geek Chris Kissack, currently the Business Development Manager at Affinity Isle of Man Limited. Chris is a lifelong gamer and esports solution specialist who's driven by a passion for problem solving, thinking outside the box, and a love for the video game industry. In this episode, Chris takes us on a whistle-stop tour of his life and career, and through his fantastic story helps demystify esports. Thanks for that. He explains that he's always been looking for ways to embrace the geek opportunity, and he was an esports advisor to the Isle of Man government and has a wealth of knowledge, experience and a wide network of connections across not only the esports industry, but also the corporate, financial and emerging tech sectors. His mission is to support the local esports ecosystem here on the Isle of Man, but also to raise the island's profile as a trusted, beneficial and authentic place to do esports business. Chris believes in building meaningful, long-lasting relationships that create value and opportunities which drive innovation in new opportunities and ideas. Here's this week's conversation with Chris Kissack in episode 64 of Island Influencers. Welcome to Chris Kissack today as my guest on Island Influencers. It's lovely to have you in person as requested. No more Zooms at the moment for you, Chris. You've done enough of those. So Chris has kindly come out to St John's Mill in St John's to record this episode of Island Influencers today. Thanks so much, Chris, for coming. Welcome.
No, thank you. It's I don't know when I reached out to you or you reached out to me to come on the podcast, but I'm super excited to finally be here.
Yeah, it's taken a while to tee up, hasn't it, really? Yeah.
It has, yeah. And I'd not been to the conference centre here, so I'm hoping to get a bit of a tour afterwards as well.
Oh, yeah, it's legendary. The water wheel works downstairs. It hasn't been this week, I don't think. But yeah, it's a super place, 200 years old, and, you know, we've been here just over 2 years. It's brilliant. What a lovely place. And you meet so many people coming through. There's quite a lot of conferences going on. I don't think I've known it busier, which is a great place to come out of from COVID, having been sort of, well, no one here, obviously.
Well, that's a really good sign. Yeah. And as I said, I mean, it's only a stone's throw away from Tim Wood Mills. So afterwards, if I've got time, maybe a bit of shopping as well. Oh, yeah. But I'm here for the podcast.
Yeah.
Not for the shops.
Okay. Glad to hear it. Well, why don't we kick off? Tell us all about yourself and where you come from first. Okay. Before I get you to explain in terms that my mum would understand that what esports is. Okay.
Yeah. So with the like we've already said, with a surname like Kissack, I'm definitely Manx born and bred, if they still say that. Manx is the hills.
Yep. Have you lived here all your life? Not yet. Yeah. That one.
Yeah. And born in Douglas and lived here all my life, but fortunate to work in different places for either short periods of time, a little bit longer. But my home and my hat is definitely here on the island. Yeah. And if we go all the way back, I've always been a geek, a proud geek as well. And growing up on the island, I've always looked for ways that I can embrace that kind of geek opportunity. So whether or not that was when way back in the early 90s when internet cafes were opening up, hanging out there, organising different games and tournaments, playing video games with my friends, hanging out at Game when it was in Strand Street. Even though I wasn't on the payroll, it was pretty much like practically there every day during the summer.
Right.
And I mean, I'd love to sort of dive into some of the questions around sort of the esports and things. I'm trying to not jump the gun on some of the questions that you're going to ask. But, I mean, in answer to your question, sort of what I'm about, I mean, anybody who, I suppose, knows me in the sectors, I'm quite, prevalent on LinkedIn. I use my LinkedIn platform to raise my profile of what I'm about and what I do.
You've got a really wide following too. I've seen some of your posters, thousands and thousands of shares, which is super.
Yes, and I'm very much driven by engagement on that content. So sometimes booking the trend to what, especially on that platform, sometimes people approach it a little bit too corporate and formal. They still see it as a strictly business platform, but very much I use that platform to raise the profile of the island, and it is sort of my main social platform. But it's an opportunity to talk about the Isle of Man, talk about what we're doing here, talk about my interests, and engage with people that sometimes wouldn't have even been able to put a pin in the map where the island is.
Yeah, no, true.
And I've just come back from 2 conferences on the bounce, and it was a bit humbling. So especially the first one was, we follow you on LinkedIn. Can we get a selfie? And I'm like, I'm not famous. I'm not, honestly.
Sounds like you are. Sounds like you are. Well, you're on here, so you must be.
Exactly, yeah. You only get the famous people on the podcast. But it was great to see that, the content is working and people are actually getting out there.
Yeah, it's that. Well, okay, so it sounds to me like you've ended up pretty much in your perfect job and your perfect sector from growing up, where your hobby was playing video games. So how did you get to do that?
Okay.
What was your pathway?
Yeah, that was a really good question, and I'll try and stay focused and not go down a rabbit hole. So
it's your story, mate. You know.
Yeah. So if we go all the way back, my father is a big football fan. He was super into his football and tried to get both me and my brother to follow in his footsteps with being, a football fan. And as it just turned out, I wasn't into football. I couldn't get into that, but was big into the video game space. And then in the early 80s, so 86, 87, we went on a holiday to Blackpool Perza Beach, and there was a Space Invaders tournament taking place. And
I loved Space Invaders.
Yeah. So I saw these people playing video games competitively.
Yeah.
So this is way before the term esports had been coined and even before the internet. But what I saw was that same level of excitement, that same level of competitiveness as in traditional sports, but people playing something that I could relate to. And since then I was hooked on video games being played competitively. But back then there's definitely no career path when I was 7, but I wasn't sort of thinking that far ahead. But it took a long time in the world of competitive video games for it to be seen as and taken seriously as an industry. But growing up, I was always looking for ways to incorporate, I suppose, video games and computer games into my kind of career. So I went to Bellarmine High School. Following finishing Bellarmine, I went to college, Isle of Man College, and did an ICT course.
Yeah.
And organised unofficial, off-the-books video game tournaments at college. Almost got kicked out for doing that very thing. But it was an opportunity to, again, sort of see that video gaming and competitiveness in place. And what was really interesting, we jumped forward like 20 years. I was asked to go back to college to speak to some of the students about esports. And as I was walking around the college, I saw posters advertising tournaments.
No way. All above board now.
All above board. Oh. And when I was in front of the students, I was like, you don't know how surreal this is. Is that when I didn't tell them I almost got kicked out, but I did say that I used to run tournaments which were off the books.
Yeah.
And now you're advertising this and you're encouraging people to take part. I was left college, ended up working for a software company, local software company that managed and created payroll software and corporate structuring software. Mm-hmm. And I managed their development team for 9 years. And as part of that role, we also, as I said, we developed corporate software. I had to learn the corporate space. I had to learn about different corporate structuring because the software we produced would spit out share certificates. It would spit out register of directors. So it was an industry that was alien to me, but I did have to learn it. And I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed different corporate structuring, different planning, looking at different trust laws. And when I finished that run of working in the the software space. I looked at where I could take that knowledge, and I started a pathway working in the corporate sector. So calling on the IT side when was needed, because it's always valuable to be able to speak geek to the IT team, and get on side with the IT department is always beneficial. But yeah, that really took me on a pathway into the corporate world, and worked for a number of CSPs on various structuring, and really enjoyed it. But all the while, I was still following my passions from an esports point of view, following the industry, following teams, cheering teams on, connecting with different team owners, and looking at ways where this industry was starting to evolve, where I could bring that knowledge. Because a lot of these decision makers in the world of esports had come from bedroom to world stage and never been in a boardroom before. They'd never talked about structuring. They didn't know about even how to open up a bank account. And those are all things that I knew. I might not be able to play professionally anymore, or even semi-professionally, but what I could bring to that industry was the knowledge and understanding of the boardroom of the corporate world.
Yeah, the how-to.
Yes, very much so. And the esports industry is very welcoming of, and there's a mantra that I use quite a lot on podcasts and panels when I'm asked, how do I get into the esports industry? And if you're seen as putting value in before you try and take value out, you'll be welcomed.
What, you mean helping others?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
yeah, surprisingly, yeah. But if you're seen as coming in because esports is the new thing, and
it's going to make some money. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The shutters will come down, and it's very guarded.
Yeah. No. Okay. Well, that's a great background. So, I'm guessing that today's aspiring esport participant wouldn't necessarily need to do that, but they'd really need to connect with you or someone like you to help that pathway. Yeah,
I mean, it depends. So I met some amazing. I was just back from London, so I was hosting a panel at a Wembley event, an esports Wembley event. And a mum reached out to me on LinkedIn, professional lady, and she reached out and said, look, I've been following your content. And my son is 15, and he's an aspiring esports team owner. And he'd love to be able to learn about how to get into the industry, how to form his team, and what would you recommend? And I said, well, we've got this conference coming up. I think you should, that's something that he should come along to. So she bought a ticket for herself and him, and they came along to the conference, and I introduced both of them to a number of team owners and pro players, and it was great to see how supportive the industry was to these people.
Yeah.
They made the effort to come out to this event. And I spoke to him at the end of the 2 days, and he was on cloud nine.
I bet.
No pun intended, but Cloud9 is an esports organisation. If my esports fans are listening, but yeah, he was super hyped and super excited,
right.
And he'd met so many heroes of his, big team owners, and they'd welcomed him into the fold because he'd come in to learn, and that's the way I suppose the esports industry is a fantastic industry to be part of and work in.
Yeah.
If you're honest, and there's a word that gets used a lot in the world of esports, which is authenticity. And if you're seen as being authentic, and you don't need to be an expert, but if you're seen as being authentic in either the value you're trying to bring or how you're learning, you'll be welcomed.
Sure.
Absolutely.
It appears to be spawning a whole new raft of content for general entertainment, though, doesn't it? I mean,
yes.
Am I right in thinking games, movies like Ready Player One and the new one that's just out, Free Guy?
Free Guy, yeah.
That's pretty much the sort of what esports is about.
At its core, esports stands for electronic sports. So esports is playing video games competitively. So whether or not it's in a big hall in Blackpool in 1986, 87, or it's in Wembley Stadium, or it's in the Mercedes-Benz Arena and 50,000 people and millions of people watching worldwide.
Yeah.
It's playing video games competitively.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what video game that is, but if there is competitive integrity, if it's played as in a traditional sport, but the esports industry is constantly evolving. And there's new games that are coming along. Traditional sports and esports those two worlds are starting to merge and collide and learn from each other. So
the YouTuber, the players who they actually make a vlog, don't they, about their game, TDM and
yes. So those.
Spongy, what's his name? Spawny, whatever he was, the Minecraft guy. What's he called?
Not sure the Minecraft guy. I'm not a big Minecraft fan.
Squid, or I can't remember his name. My son used to follow him.
But
thankfully we're out of that phase.
Yeah. But they, so those are content creators.
Yeah.
So those are folks that will create content, and they won't necessarily play professionally. So they've come from playing professionally.
Yeah.
But they're content creators. But there are times when, if you're an esports team or an esports org and you're sponsored by, let's say, BMW as an example. So you're sponsored by BMW, and BMW want to see their brand in front of as many eyeballs as possible. Now, they can put their logo on the shirts of the team that are playing competitively, but those players, just like any sport, they're out training, so they're in their either boot camp or their HQ, and you're not going to get to see them as much as if it was the brand was on a streamer or a YouTuber who is streaming for sort of 7, 8, 9, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
So if you're
millions
of followers,
hundreds of millions of followers, some of them, amazing.
So if you're an esports organization owner and you want your sponsor to be happy and to cut you bigger checks, say, well, yes, you can put our logo on our shirts of our competitive players, but also we've got these streamers who've got, as you said, millions of followers. And those streamers, as I said, won't necessarily play competitively. They're just creating content, and they will play whatever game is hot at the moment, and whether or not that's one of the competitive games or it's a new game that's been released or a retro game.
Yeah.
But it is a smart move for them to have those.
Yeah.
And it's not just restricted to video games. I mean, there's a number of esports organizations that have taken on chess grandmasters and chess players, and the boom of chess during the pandemic, with Queen's Gambit hitting Netflix, with chess.com, seeing more users. People wouldn't necessarily be able to play in person because they were on lockdown. So chess kind of rose up through the ranks on Twitch, which is a streaming platform. So that's where esports organizations are thinking, well, look, we need some chess players on our roster.
Yeah.
Because our sponsor is going to be able to see their brand in front of more eyeballs. So the industry is constantly evolving. But all behind this, you need that corporate structuring. You need to be smart. And where the Isle of Man comes into play is, as you know, and Isle of Man listeners know, the Isle of Man, so twofold. So the sports is in the Isle of Man's DNA. I mean, I firmly believe that. And we only have to look at cycling. We have to look at the TT. We really do get behind individuals who have a passion for greatness in whatever sport that may be. And with our football club, Isle of Man. So traditional sports is in the islands, deep rooted in the island's DNA. And the esports industry wants and needs to learn from traditional sports very, very much. So, gone from the days of the early 90s when a team would be locked away in the dark for 12 hours, 13 hours, playing the games constantly, and then come out when you're good enough.
Yep.
That's not the way it is anymore. So the esports industry looks at the players at the pro level and says, right, well, we need to make sure they're eating right, they're sleeping right, their diet is right, that there is proper breaks, their health and well-being is looked after, just like any sport. Because if you want to play in a tournament for 20,000 or $250,000, or there's tournaments within the esports industry where the prize pool is $25 million, $40 million. So if you're putting a team in for that, if you want the best from your team, you need to make sure that they are looked after the same way as if they were a football team or they were a golf player. And the island's got a lot to offer in that space. So, I spent some time during my role with government, with Digital Isle of Man, educating those in traditional sports space on esports.
Yeah.
They may have seen it or heard about it, or their son or daughter may have watched some tournaments, but in their professional capacity, being traditional sports, some of them were a little bit standoffish, and it wouldn't be too far of a fetch to say they saw it as a threat. And but once they understood that actually there's opportunities to to bring these two together. If they've got young athletes who they are going to be gamers of an evening, but can you educate them to say, well, look, if you look at posture, look at how you're eating right, you're sleeping right, you can be a better gamer. And, you know, my youngest has got a Fortnite coach, and a lot of the things from his coach talks about, it's not just playing the games, it's, you know, make sure you're sleeping right, you're eating right.
Yeah.
You're talking about the
Which
things.
is a challenge, I'm guessing, for sleeping right.
It is and it isn't. I mean, it's a challenge when sometimes parents will say, look, you need to come off and you need to stop playing those games. But if a coach tells you, and that, you know, if you're 7 and your coach has already given you tips on how to play better, and once you listen to him and apply that, it's a case of, well, actually, if my coach tells me to do something, I'm going to do it because it means I can perform better and play better.
Yeah, and I go to bed when I'm told.
Exactly.
All parents listening, note, get a coach for your child.
It doesn't even have to be. I mean, I do get asked that a lot, Sharon.
Yeah.
Is you're in esports? Can you tell me how I can get my kid off that game? And you know, the single biggest piece of advice I give to parents on that is take the time to play the last game with them. If you can engage with them, if you can play with them and say, okay, well, we'll play the last game together. You know, they'll appreciate that from an interest point of view. Just the same way as if they were playing around a football or watching something on TV. So if you can engage with that and play with them, you'll learn about the game, and you'll understand that some of the games they play can't just be switched off like that. You know, if it's a live event or it's a live game or it's a live round, it would be like pulling them off, you know, mid-game during a football match.
Yeah. I guess it's moved on a bit from the days when I played Star Wars Battlefront with my son.
Yes, yeah.
And we were riding speeders through the forest of Endor. And the message I kept getting consistently was, you have been killed by yourself. Because I'd ridden into a tree. Well, these controls, they make no sense at all. So, yeah, that's my one.
But you remember Endor. So is this a bit of a geek coming through, or is that just...
And I just like films.
Yeah.
I just love Star Wars and Star Trek and anything like that. And the 3D, the gaming headsets that you can get. Funny enough, we were talking about Wembley earlier, but my one experience of playing a virtual reality game was in an X-Wing, where you could literally look down with this headset on, and it felt like you're in space with planets all around you, and it was bizarre.
Amazing.
Yeah, amazing. It was amazing. I can't wait for that to evolve a little more.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming into the homes now. So there's more VR kits. This Christmas coming up, there'll be more VR headsets in the homes, which is exciting, but it also comes with responsibility, I think, from developers, from parents, from across the board, because you're able to engage with content in such a new and in your face kind of experience. Literally, you're able to touch things and see things in ways that you can't from when you're on just in TV in a video game. While I'm excited about emerging technology, but you know, as I'm getting older, I am also a little bit cautious as well. I am. I mean,
well, we've all seen Johnny English, haven't we, with his VR headset and the sort of chaos he caused. So yeah, we're a bit off that.
So yes, you know, it's esports is a fascinating industry, constantly evolving, constantly learning. And recently, I did I'm really proud of the time I spent with government and Digital Isle of Man and the grassroots. Yeah, the grassroots side was super, super important to me.
Yeah. So what's happened there? You're taking more of an advisory role there now, before you've moved to your current position. So tell me about what's happened there.
So I joined government as head of esports.
Yes.
And I got to engage with stakeholders on and off the island. I spent time with young gamers. It was very important to me when I took on that role. One of the first meetings I had was with a number of local tournament organisers, 3 local uni lads. They run an organisation called Overdrive, and they'd been running tournaments out of church halls on the island. And for a number of years, they organised Super Smash Bros. Tournaments. and I invited them all in for a meeting,
Super Smash
Brothers. It's on the Nintendo Switch.
Super Smash Brothers, right?
Yes,
okay.
on the Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
And
my mum's not going to know that.
well, she might know the characters. She'll know Mario.
She'll know Mario
and Sonic and those characters.
Okay.
So these guys had been running tournaments, and I was aware of them, and I'd been following them, and I invited them in to for a meeting within government, and they were a little taken back.
Yeah.
They're like, well, why does somebody ahead of a division within government want to meet with us? And it was super important that I showcased both my authenticity, but how I could support them. I wanted to learn about their frustrations and the challenges that they had, and how I could help them from a government side of things, and help promote them and promote what they were doing. And because I knew not only was it the right thing to do, but by showcasing the Isle of Man that in that space that takes those guys seriously, that supports them, that noise resonates off island.
Yes.
So if I'm trying to attract, or the island is trying to attract esports businesses to come to the island and take the island seriously, they will say, well, what are you doing in your back garden? If I'm a big developer, or if I'm a big team organizer or tournament operator, and I want to look to the Isle of Man to do something, show me your authenticity.
Yeah. So show me that you can take grassroots and grow it to elite level.
100%. Not even necessarily from an elite level. I mean, even just supporting them that we understand the importance of grassroots. We understand the importance of creating that supportive ecosystem, and it showed. So I spent time with those guys and worked with likes of Justin from ELS, and they did an event. So the guys did their normal event at their church hall, Baden Church Hall.
Wow.
But ELS came in with the
decent lights,
80-inch screens and the sort of kit that you'd have at like the Elton John concert, and the guys were blown away. They were like, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
well, who wouldn't be? Yeah.
But it was very overkill, but it was fantastic for not only those guys, but the local gamers as well.
Yeah.
And that was when the Affinity group got on my radar as well, because they started to sponsor other local tournaments as well. And they understood the importance of grassroots.
So Affinity, are they a local company?
They are, yes. Yeah. So they've been going since 2004.
Right.
And I've been with them for just about 4 months now.
Right.
So if we go back a little bit, it got to the end of my contract within Gov. And while, I'm super fortunate to be able to have done that and raise the island's profile and the things that we did there, the areas that I was wanting to focus on the most, being the grassroots side of things, were things that I felt I could do with a little bit more freedom back in the private sector. Having worked in the private sector all my life, while government was great, I missed the speed at which things could move in the private space. So, and I'd been following Affinity Group, and they had shown that they'd listened to some of the seminars and the panels that I'd been on. They'd understood that importance. They'd been sponsoring local tournaments as well, and their bread and butter was super yacht and the corporate structuring around the yacht space. But they were really keen in getting involved in the esports space and emerging sectors. Mm-hmm. And I'd seen a number of contacts that I knew from the industry seek those guys out and look to join Affinity. And the feedback from them was, look, it's a fantastic family atmosphere. Everybody's got each other's back. It's super supportive. It's a young management team, but forward-thinking and dynamic. All of the cliche words, but the cliche words which actually...
It supports the culture that it really is.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And Andy and Alex are fantastic, the CEO and CCO. And, I approached them and we had a number of conversations, and I joined about 4 months ago.
Yeah, very good.
And I've not been happier. I couldn't be happier with them.
Yeah, great.
And excited to be with them on their journey as they step into this space.
Well, that's really great. Thanks for sharing that. That's a whistle stop tour, but I mean, how fascinating. And
there's
now in your dream job, and
I would say so. Yeah, I mean, it's also it's really great to see the work and it's not just myself. The guys in the digital team as well at government, and the local stakeholders and local gamers, and the Isle of Man really is on the map in the esports space now.
So it seems to have been successful to diversify the economy, which is what we've needed to do for such a long time.
It is, yeah. I mean, but at the same time, sort of managing expectations. I mean, we are we're at chapter 1
Yeah.
here, and the comparisons for other industries that are here, being the e-gaming space is probably the main one that it does get compared to.
Yeah.
That's been going for 17, 18 years. So I mean, it is, you know, I'm super humbled by attending conferences and panels and people, you know, recognizing me and saying, look, I've seen you putting content on the Isle of Man, wanting to know more about the island. I mean, and previously they'd known the island for the TT, or they'd known the island as a place that you would go for, you know, high net worth structuring. And we are really being taken seriously now as an island that understands grassroots, is looking at the traditional sports side of things. And as a government, we were the first government in the world to sponsor a professional team.
Brilliant.
So,
which one was it?
So, local org. So it's the Isle of Man's first pro team called X7,
Right.
and they play in. Their main roster is a League of Legends roster, and they had an amazing debut. 13-0 undefeated
Wow.
in the UK leagues. They're now playing in the European League,
Fantastic.
in Division 1, and they really, you know, ruffled feathers with regards to their debut, and it all came together really nicely. Being we'd heard of the Isle of Man, we'd heard about the grassroots, and now this pro team is coming out of nowhere and really kind of making some noise. Being on the panels, talking at different events, being on podcasts like
Brilliant.
this one, and still, regardless of where I am, still beating the drum of the Isle of Man, and in the space that I'm super passionate about.
Well, great. Yeah, that's, I mean, and for the benefit of our listeners, it'd be great to have any links that you could share to that sort of activity, so that we can, after the episode, we can go and check out this this team. That sounds,
I mean, X7, absolutely. I mean, x7.gg is their website. But the thing with esports is there's something there for everybody.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a hardcore gamer that plays the shooting games. There's a racing sim scene. There's sports games. There's more family-friendly games.
Does Swift count?
Kind of. Yeah. So it's an interesting piece because there's the cyclists and the cycling community that have taken obviously Swift as their own, which is understandable, and they don't want to be bracketed esports. You know, they want to keep it to themselves. To my knowledge, while there are professional Zwift riders and teams, there's no esports organizations that have taken those guys on as of yet.
Opportunity.
I would say so.
You know, Isle of Man cycling, you said it.
Yes, yeah, very much so. So, and there are conversations afoot around that side of things as well, of where Zwift can kind of fit into that space.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, one of the things that I was talking about when I was at Wembley was looking at, so I did get a few chuckles when I raised this, but I think there's an opportunity. There's a game called Farming Simulator, and it does have a tournament aspect to it. Farming Simulator.
It's not a weed farm. No, I've heard about that one.
No, not that one. So it's, you know, it's the objective from a tournament level. You know, you have the different teams, and they have to ride their tractors into the field and balance certain hay bales and bring it back to the respective kind of farms for processing. But it's easy to understand and watch. You can't help but if you watch one of these competitive games, you can't help but get involved in the excitement. And I would love, you know, I'm putting it out here now on this podcast, I would love to see the Isle of Man host a farming simulator tournament. We've got a fantastic young farming community here. From a sponsor point of view, you know, if you've got tractor manufacturers and the endemic sponsors within the farming game, to be able to put prize pools up and host that. Yeah. So that's a little side project I'm kind of working on to be able to do that. But again, it can show authenticity.
You'd have to have grass grow faster.
Yes.
In order to make that compelling watching now, wouldn't you?
It is, you know, I'll drop some links. You know, I question anybody who doesn't watch it and think, actually, I could enjoy this. I could watch that and get involved and cheer my team on. And
that's a good challenge. Okay. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing all of that. But
you're welcome.
I mean, moving on, if you don't mind me asking, I always ask this, right, to all guests. Okay. So when I meet people in my day job, which is financial planning, not podcasting, what's your earliest memory of money?
My earliest memory of money? Wow. Yeah. That's a really, really good question. I would say probably pocket money. You know, pocket money as a kid, and, you know, you're 10, 11 years old, and I think heading to the Wessex garage. I lived in Douglas. I grew up on Selborne Road. And sort of saving my pocket money up and going and buying trading cards, be it Pokemon cards or whatever it may be, and I'd say that's probably my earliest memory.
Yeah, not sweets. That's interesting. So what did money mean to you back then?
Probably not enough. I didn't have the value. I didn't probably see it as much as soon as I probably should have. But I just knew that these shiny coins, they could get me these cards, and then I could take the cards in the school and trade them. But yeah, that's probably my earliest memory.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. So, of all the things you've done throughout your life so far, then what's given you the most fulfillment?
I would say, being a father, it comes top of the list.
Yeah.
But I spent some time in the Himalayas. So I went to Everest and Everest Base Camp, and we probably haven't got time for that whole story, but I ended up there after I worked in the software company. I burnt out a little bit. I was young, disposable income, and Blackberries had just come out, and I was tethered to my Blackberry. And I wasn't looking after myself from a sleep point of view, and ended up going to the docs, and I wasn't sleeping right, and he said, look, you need to, I've seen this in young doctors, you need to unplug.
Yeah.
You need to, switch off. You're not even 30 and you're on your way to an early grave. So I went somewhere where there was no internet.
Yeah.
There was no connectivity, which was the Himalayas.
Yeah.
So,
how long did you stay there for?
a month and a half.
Wow.
And did some climbing, spent some time in some of the temples, and hung out in Kalapatar, and just there was a moment. So there's a peak called Kalapatar, and you can see the curvature of the earth, and you can look out there, and there was that moment I can remember thinking the Isle of Man sometimes doesn't even appear on maps. Weather reports when I was growing up and younger, you'd get excited if the Isle of Man didn't have a cloud covering it. So you can see the Isle of Man. And the Isle of Man is so tiny in the grand scheme of things, and here I am, at the top of the world effectively. And that put a lot of things into perspective, when I came back from climbing and came back from the Himalayas and had a newfound understanding of work-life balance. And wasn't as tethered to my Blackberry. The world didn't, collapse. The job didn't collapse because I wasn't, hooked into my emails and answering them as soon as they landed. So I'd say,
were you changed?
I was, yeah. I was, and it's I always travelled quite extensively growing up, and I can't wait to return to the Himalayas, especially with my youngest, and travel some of the same paths as well. But yes, I definitely was changed coming back from there.
Have you done that yet?
Not yet. No, he's 7. I'm not allowed to take him out to the Himalayas just yet. But but soon. Yeah, soon. But yeah, in answer to your question, absolutely, I'd say the trip to the Himalayas.
I'm almost expecting a long list here, but for any existing or aspiring business owner, entrepreneur,
okay,
what would be your number one tip?
From an entrepreneur's point of view?
Well, number one business tip.
Fortune favours the brave and the bold. And fortune is not necessarily monetary. Fortune can be work-life balance. Fortune can be happiness in your job. It can be seeing that idea come to fruition. And ultimately, yes, you've got monetary value, but you've got to be brave and bold. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to not be afraid to pick up the phone and ask. Don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask them for assistance, ask them for the help. Don't be afraid to stand up on stage and in front of people and share your idea and share your passions. And that's something that I think has done me well, and it's something that I do tend to loop back around to is that fortune favours the brave and the bold. And I was asked back to Bellacamine High School to talk to all the Year 10s after they had their mock results a number of years ago. That was something that I really kind of pushed there. Say some of you will have had your mock results and they might not be the results that you want, and you might not necessarily have a pathway to university, whether or not it's financially or you're just not book smart. It's schooling and university is just not for you. But if you've got an opportunity or a pathway, or you've got something inside you that you really want to go after, be brave and bold and do it and go after it. And you might fail again and again, but going after it and giving it your all, you will reap the fortunes of that.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's pretty good. Thank you. So what do you do to relax and keep your life in balance other than nipping off to the Himalayas, which I admit it's been a bit problematic of late?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been there. I would say spending time gaming with my youngest. And
what games?
Usually Fortnite. I play Fortnite with him. If I get a chance to game on my own, there's a game called Skyrim. and it's an RPG. And you can be a warrior or
what's an RPG?
A role-playing game.
Okay.
So you can craft your own story in that game. And,
right.
It's a gorgeous-looking game. You can go out into the wilderness. You can go on quests. You can climb mountains, or you can have the solitude of just exploring and foraging. And I think because it's an opposite of my day job, I do talk to a lot of people. You know, I'm fairly loud and noisy in whatever it is that I do. And when I want to kind of switch off and relax, I look for something which is the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And if not that, you know, I'm a bit of a bookworm. I'm on for 50 books this year.
Gosh.
Yeah, I'm 44.
Right.
Done this year.
And what's the one you'd recommend to our listeners of that?
Oh, you know, I don't read business books. You know, and I know that's a question that sometimes you do ask.
Sometimes you do ask it.
It's been a while since I've read any business books.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes you just need to unwind, don't you?
You do.
So what's the best one you've read lately, of whatever ilk?
So I really like Stephen King.
Yeah.
I really, you know, I've read Stephen King since I was, you know, even before a teenager. But sort of 12 years old, I read Cujo. But some of his other books, you know, Stephen King has a to non-Stephen King readers, they think they're all gory and scary and killer clowns. But if you look at some of his tales, Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, he's Stand By Me. He's an amazing creator of characters, and you become invested in these characters and their background and their stories.
Yeah.
You know, I tend to read either The Stand, most years. So I've read The Stand again this year, which was a little bit surreal, it's about a pandemic and it's about a virus that sweeps the world, and reading it again, so it was a little bit surreal, but
sure.
The very, you know, that book is about overcoming you know, diversity and hardship and individuals coming together, and strengths, and if anybody's not read The Stand, I would definitely recommend reading that.
It's a good recommendation. Yeah,
it's a tome. It's a huge tome.
Do you read it electronically or do you read paper?
I'm very much paper. So I have a tradition or a routine, you'd call it, of a Saturday. I live down south. I live in Port Erin, and I'll go to the library. So most of those 44 books have all come from Port Erin Library.
Right.
And that's, you know, it's a nice way again for me to unwind, and bring them back and have a browse and order some new books. And so I'm very, very much paper.
Yeah. Great.
I haven't read a digital book in a long time.
Interesting. You see enough screens, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I feel the same. Mm-hmm. So, tell me what you think the best things are about living in the Isle of Man, other than Port Erin Library.
Yes. I mean, you've got the obvious ones. You've got the safety and the fact that we're UNESCO Biosphere, and I'd say the community, being able to, whether or not you want to run an event or you want to expand your own knowledge or meet different people, I really feel that we've got such a strong and supportive community here. And when I have conversations with startups or individuals that are considering coming to the island either to relocate or do business, and being able to say, well, look, you can organise, or you can have a meeting in the morning with your investor, with your lawyer, with your bank manager, with your colleagues, without having to go across town, but also you're able to meet new people, and whereas if you're working in somewhere like London, and you know, you can't always catch people's eye, you have to have your head down and you have to be guarded. Whereas here, I found that people are a lot more open to joining these communities and be part of that community spirit, and the food and the drink, and it's too many. There's so many amazing things about being here.
Yeah. Okay. So what on the other foot then? What's the challenges?
Getting off and on the island.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and the cost around that. And I'd say that as borders start opening up and travel starts to opening up again, and like a lot of your listeners are going to be traveling a lot more. That side of things, sometimes it can cost more to get off the island than it does to fly the other side of the world. And if you don't plan it and don't pre-plan it, it can be really challenging. Yeah. But there are times when you can get a bargain, and you can be, in the centre of when they do the city flights again. You can fly over. You can be in the middle of London for 9 a.m. Have a whole day, and you could be home in time for dinner.
Can't see that on the cards, can you? Can you see it? When we bought the Steam packet, I can't see them buying BA. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think as business starts to open up, and I'm confident that the island, will continue to raise its profiles in different sectors, and more people will want to come here and do business here. And when they get here, the island, the great thing about the Isle of Man is it sells itself. We might not necessarily be great at marketing the island. The guys in digital and locate and visit do a great job at putting the adverts out there. But I think we can do better.
Yeah.
We can do a lot better. We can be more bold. But once people are here, they only need to spend a day here and the island has sold itself.
Yeah.
The beauty, the safety, the community, and as more people come here and more people come to do business here, there will be that pressure to have more flights and more pathways to get off and on the island. But yeah, it's only a small thing, but it can be a costly thing.
Yeah.
But
okay.
Everything else outweighs it because it's fantastic here.
All right. Okay. So what's planned next for you, Chris? I mean, you're just new into Affinity. So what's next? What you got on the radar there?
On the radar. Continue to support the grassroots community. I mean, that's always something which will continue.
Any big projects coming up that you can say?
Ooh. So there's one, coming up very soon with the Smash Brothers guys. I've already sort of tipped my hand at the farming simulator one. So watch this space on that one.
Yep.
I'm excited to be. The great thing about Affinity is they're very, very forward thinking and looking at different areas that they can bring their skill set and their experience into, and whether or not that's bringing something from their expertise in the shipping industry and the e-gaming industry. We're looking at different sectors from the cannabis space with the government launching its licensing regime and getting involved in that, blockchain, different tech.
I told you, weed farming, that'll be what it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is opportunities. I mean, I'm not necessarily joking on that. I mean, I think, we've got a range of licensing opportunities, and the fact that the cannabis regime framework is managed by the GSC, the Gambling Supervision Commission.
Yes, I know.
And the GSC is seen as a gold standard. They are seen as a world-class regulator. And if we can get this right, if we can do this right and attract the right types of businesses here, I think it could be extremely profitable for the island and pushing back into the economy. So I will be involved in that space in some way. And metaverse side of things, I think we've probably run out of time, but maybe in the future come back and talk about the metaverse and what's going on in that space.
What's the metaverse?
So the metaverse is a bringing together of digital and physical brands in a digital space.
Right.
So if you look at what it happens in Fortnite as an example, you don't just play games in Fortnite anymore, you watch concerts. So me and my youngest have watched a number of concerts in game, and these are live concerts. Brands can showcase those things in that
almost
space.
Like the ABBA concert, where they're or are they?
The same thing. Yeah. So virtual and even though I'm not going to go on a rant about Facebook on this podcast, but anybody who knows me knows I'm not a fan of those guys.
Okay.
But or Meta, as they've called themselves now, they announced that their commitment to the metaverse and the hiring of 10,000 staff, and which all comes back down to responsibility.
So they're all just really jumping on the bandwagon that was the Aha video all those years ago. Do you remember that?
I certainly do. I'm old enough to remember that.
Take on me.
Take on me, yeah. But
that's Meta. Right there.
Yeah. However,
earliest must be earliest example.
Well, there is, but you've even seen those sort of things appear in the video game space. It's a recognized song. It's a recognized video. But the metaverse is something that should be on everybody's radar.
Yeah.
How can you sell your products or your brand or even your podcast? How would you listen to your podcast or engage in a podcast in the metaverse?
Well, I know who to ask when I need to have that question answered, Chris, don't I?
Absolutely.
Before we finish up, what's your favourite quote? Have you got one? A favourite quote? Apart from the fortune favours the brave and the bold.
I've got a few. I mean, there's one I used to be attracted to when I was younger, which is a frog in the well doesn't know the sea. So, and that's an ancient, I'm probably bastardizing that, but it's about if you're in a sort of small environment like the Isle of Man, sometimes you can forget kind of the vastness and what's going on beyond our shores. And you may be happy in your little well there or your little space, but there was a lot more to be had outside there. But really coming back...
really good, actually.
Yeah.
That's a great quote.
But very much, fortune favours the brave and the bold is something that I need to go back through and listen to more of your podcasts and compare and see whether or not anybody's dropped that
I
one.
like The Frog in the Well is a good one.
Okay.
And that one's pretty good too. So.
Excellent.
So where can people go to learn more about you and what you're up to? LinkedIn, obviously.
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
LinkedIn. You can follow me on Twitter at Chris Kissack. I'm starting to use Twitter a little bit more now and engage, although it did get me into trouble this week when I was in Wembley. So I tweeted out a photograph of I was in Gatwick Departure Lounge, and I saw the big photo of the big sign of departures and times, and I thought for a second, you know what, it's great to sort of be back in this situation again, being able to be in a busy airport and see all of these flights going. So I took a photo of it and tweeted it out and said, look, great to be back traveling again. And someone who follows me replied and said, oh, you must be waiting for the Isle of Man flight. I'd not met them before, and he said, you must be in the same departure lounge. So I tweeted back, have you got time for a beer? And I said, yeah, absolutely, we'll meet for a beer. And he'd followed me. We'd not met each other in person before, and conversation was flowing. It was great. And then we said, we better check the board. And it was Isle of Man flight was boarding. And the gate was way, way over the other end of the airport. So we had to dash. I'll be honest, I almost gave myself a heart attack. It was clearly a sign that I've been eating and drinking too well at these conferences. I'm not in shape. So,
almost missed a flight.
I did, yeah. But you can. Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely the best way to engage and connect.
Any websites we can look at? Affinity.
Yeah, affinityco.com.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Being able to sort of see our services and see our brands there and see what we're doing in the space. But thank you so much.
Oh no, thank you. It's been fascysinating. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's great. Thanks.
I know I've gone down a few rabbit holes, but hopefully
no, not at all. Hopefully we've managed to demystify esports a bit, and that's got to be a good thing.
I think so. Thank you so
Brilliant.
much.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Island Influencers from Thornton Chartered Financial Planners. To find out more and for useful links, visit thorntonfs.com/podcasts.